Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Hello again, and welcome to the Pronunciation Pro podcast. My name is Annie Rudin, and I am here to talk about all things English pronunciation and the American accent and confidence in speaking American English. So I'm so glad to have you here today. Today, we are going to talk about overcoming the fear of speaking English. And I'm going to give you some confidence building tips today. Now, before we get started, I just got back from a 7-day cruise to Alaska here in the United States. And I'd never been on a cruise before. My parents were celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. And so they took me and all of my siblings. I'm the youngest of 9 siblings, and one of my sisters couldn't make it. She lives in Africa, in Sierra Leone, Africa, right now with her husband. But the rest of my siblings, the 7 of us, or 7 of my siblings, so the 8 of us, we went on this cruise, and, my siblings and their spouses. And we were able to spend this week together, which was fantastic. And we were able to enjoy the beautiful scenery of Alaska. We saw glaciers and we went on hikes and we saw wildlife. We actually saw a black bear all in one kind of setting. We saw bald eagles and a baby black bear and a river full of salmon. And it was just all these birds and wildlife. It was just magical. So really enjoyed that trip. One part that I really enjoyed was talking with a lot of the staff that work on the cruise ships, because they're from all over the world. And it was just fascinating to hear some stories. And if you know me, I love being able to talk to people and hear their stories and hear more about why, how they came to be where they are. I love hearing all of your stories and how you came to be where you are in life, and even geographically, how you ended up where you are. And so being able to talk to some of the staff there on the cruise ship and hearing the stories was fascinating. And everyone's English was quite good on the cruise ship. We were on the Princess cruise ship, and I was very impressed with the attitudes, and they were just very positive and fun and very much themselves as they were speaking to all of the customers and the people there. And I'm just very impressed with a lot of the confidence that they had in speaking English. Now, this is something that I've recognized in so many of you too, is just that underlying grit and determination. And as I heard a lot of the stories from the staff on the cruise ship, just recognizing how much struggle or how many hard situations that they have overcome and you have overcome in just creating opportunity for you. Maybe born into a country that doesn't have nearly as much opportunity or a situation, depending on your upbringing, and being able to then take that personal power that you have, your power to choose, and being able to then work hard and look for opportunity and take advantage of opportunity to help you grow and elevate yourself in your careers, in your life, in all areas of your life. That quality is quite remarkable. And it's a common thread that I see through our students at Pronunciation Pro, is just this desire to grow and improve and to better your situation for yourself and your children. It's quite exceptional. So I want you to really pat yourself on the back and recognize how far you've come and all that you've done and accomplished. And I'm sure there's some scars along the way that you have developed, but let's go ahead and use all of that experience and even the challenges, even the really, really hard things. And I believe that when we have the right mindset and we have the right tools, we can heal from those situations and we can be better because of the situations that you've been in and because of the circumstances that you've had to overcome. Okay? So today, let's really dive into overcoming some of these fears that we have in speaking English. And I am going to read a story that I came across that I think powerfully illustrates one of the biggest fears that we have when it comes to speaking English or speaking a language other than our native language. And the biggest fear that keeps us from being as confident as we want to be and keeps us shying away and pulling away instead of stepping into the light and stepping in onto that stage or stepping into those leadership positions that I feel like you are highly qualified for. What is keeping us back? Okay, so here's a story that kind of illustrates that fear. Okay, it's called The Man, the Boy, and the Donkey. So once upon a time, there was an old man and his young grandson who lived in a small village. They had a donkey, which they decided to take to the market to sell. As they set off on their journey, the old man let the boy ride the donkey while he walked alongside. As they passed through the first village, they heard some people laughing and saying, "Look at that selfish boy riding the donkey while his poor old grandfather has to walk." The old man, wanting to avoid the judgment of others, asked his grandson to get down, and he climbed up onto the donkey's back instead. They continued their journey and soon passed another group of people who said, "Look at that lazy old man riding the donkey while he makes the poor young boy walk." Embarrassed by this comment, the old man told his grandson to climb up on the donkey with him. A little while later, they came across another group of people who exclaimed, "How cruel! Both of them are riding that poor donkey. They will break its back." Not wanting to be seen as cruel, the old man and the boy both got off the donkey and decided to walk alongside it. As they approached the market, yet another group of people laughed and said, "How foolish they are, walking alongside a donkey that neither of them is riding." The old man, completely bewildered by now, decided they should both carry the donkey on their backs. As they struggled to carry the donkey, they reached a narrow bridge. The donkey, feeling uncomfortable and panicked, began to kick and struggle. In the commotion, the donkey slipped from their grasp, fell into the river, and was swept away by the current. The old man and the boy sat down by the side of the river, tired and disheartened. They had tried to please everyone, but in the end, they lost their donkey and felt miserable. The old man sighed and said to his grandson, "My dear boy, no matter what you do, you cannot please everyone. If we try to live our lives based on the judgments and opinions of others, we will end up losing ourselves and what is important to us. The only opinion that truly matters is your own, and you must stay true to yourself." Okay, I love this story because it definitely shows in kind of an extreme way, and kind of silly, ridiculous way, something that we all do every day, is that we are trying to focus on things that we can't control, which is, in this situation, the opinions or the thoughts or the judgments of other people. And we're trying to control what's outside of us instead of focusing on what we do actually have control over, which is our actions and our attitudes. Okay? The opinions and judgments of everyone else are ever changing. They're always going to be changing, and you're never going to really be able to satisfy everyone else. But what we have to really focus on is, what are our values? What brings us happiness? What is the priority for us? And we have to stay true to that. Okay? So why is this so hard, for all of us, especially as you're speaking another language, But why do we care so much about what other people think? Okay, have you ever thought about that? Why is it that we care so much about what other people think? Now there are different range. Some people it's like I don't care at all what other people think. And there's then the other extreme that it's like I'm living my life for other people and I'm not considering what I think, I'm just considering what other people are thinking of me. Okay, and I'm living my life based on the opinions of others. Okay, there's a whole range, so you and a spectrum. So you might be somewhere along that spectrum. Maybe you're caring too much about what people think, and there is that, caring too little, because when we care too little, it really harms relationships, right? We need to have some level of concern about what others think of us, because that helps us create connection with each other, right? If we didn't care at all what people think, then we would just, our behavior wouldn't matter to us, and we would be really isolating ourselves and causing a lot of friction between relationships. And so from my experience with working with my students at Pronunciation Pro, the struggle is more on the side of I care so much about what other people think that it creates a lot of these fears. So fears meaning fear of making mistakes. Why do we fear making mistakes? What does it matter? Because we're worried about the judgment of other people. We're worried about rejection. We're worried that others are going to think less of us, and so we're like, oh, well, maybe if I don't speak up, maybe if I don't make any of the mistakes, then I can save myself from that judgment. Okay. So we have to ask ourselves, so well, it does help to understand the why. Why do our brains function this way? Okay. So let's really take it back. So our brains are wired to protect us, to keep us safe from danger. So if you think about it in kind of, our with our ancestors back in the day, there were a lot more physical threats to us, environmental threats, animals, wild animals. It was important for us to be a part of a tribe, be part of families and tribes and communities, so that we had that protection of the group. Okay. So belonging to a community, belonging to a tribe, belonging to a family was safety for our brains. So our brains have been wired to care about what other people think of us because we want to be accepted into the group. We don't want to be kicked out, because if we were kicked out or isolated from the group, then there was some very eminent dangers right there. Okay. So our brains have been wired for thousands of years to want to belong to groups. So you'll recognize this in just, the isolation you feel when, say you're moving to a new country and maybe your family's back at home, but you're moving to this new place, a new country, just even new city, anything that's away from that community that you belong to or you feel that belonging to. Okay, when you move away, there is this break off of that belonging. And so what we're trying to establish is, where do I belong? Because our brains need that. It's a very basic need of our brains to belong somewhere. And when we don't feel like we belong there, there's a real sense of loneliness. Okay, being isolated, being on our own is emotionally painful. It can be emotionally painful for us. And emotional pain can be just as difficult as physical pain. And actually, emotional pain can cause a lot of physical pain. They talk about heartbreak. They talk about just the heaviness that comes with that. When we feel that emotional pain, when we feel that loneliness, it's a very real pain. Okay, we respond immediately when someone breaks their arm or they have a heart attack or there's something physically wrong with us. But we really need to recognize that emotional pain is very real as well and needs to be attended to. Okay, so emotional pain really kind of happens when we feel this isolation. And so as you're trying to incorporate into a new language and a culture that has this new language, it can be really disorienting to our brain because we want to belong, but then we've had experiences where we speak up and maybe it doesn't go so well. Or maybe you're asked, where are you from? Or, something that kind of triggers your brain that, like, hey, I don't belong. Or, they see me as an outsider. It kind of triggers these things in our brains telling us, you don't belong. You need to stay quiet. Don't let them hear you, because maybe you have more of a chance of belonging to this group if you don't show that you're not from there or you're not a part of them. Okay, so this is the natural wiring of our brains. Now, it helped back in the day, but in our modern day, it's not as helpful. It's not serving us nearly as much. In fact, it's more dangerous probably for us to kind of pull back than to engage in that way. And so what we have to do is we have to engage our thinking brain, our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain that can override that feelings or emotional part of our brain. So that emotional part of the brain is what is activated when you go into a room full of native English speakers and your brain starts pumping chemicals into it saying, run away. Okay. Stay small, stay quiet, don't bring attention to yourself. And the first chance you get to leave, take it. Okay. So that is the natural feelings, the feelings response of our brain. And it's doing its job of trying to keep us safe, but it's faulted. It's kind of has faulty wiring. And so what we have to do is engage that frontal lobe to say, okay, I'm actually not in danger here. I am going to walk into this room of native English speakers, and I am going to have compassion for myself, and I'm going to assume the best in this situation. I'm going to assume that everyone wants to get to know me instead of they're going to think that I don't belong or they're going to judge me. If we are assuming anything, why not choose to assume the best? Okay. So that's what we're doing in our thinking brain. We're proactively deciding what we're going to think about the situation, because our thoughts are our choice. We get to choose what we think and believe about a situation. Okay. Our thoughts are optional. Like, we don't have to believe a certain thing, and our brains will gather evidence to support it. So if we walk into a room of native English speakers and we say, they're not going to accept us. If I speak and if I make a mistake, they're going to reject me. I don't want them to think that I'm not as educated or as smart. They're going to think all these negative things about me. And you can start gathering evidence from your past or some comments that people have made, maybe about your English. You can start gathering that evidence, and I'm sure you could find some. Okay. Or you have the choice to walk into that room and say, you know what, people want to get to know me. When they ask, where are you from? That's a way for them to start. That's kind of a bid for a connection. Okay. They want to connect with me. They want to get to know me. The true me, right? Not me pretending to be an American, but the true me. They want to know me. Okay. So you can choose that. You can choose to say, they're not going to judge me. I speak multiple languages. They're going to actually be fascinated by me. They're going to be impressed with me that I speak multiple languages, because, in a room full of native English speakers, the likelihood is most of them don't know a second language or a third language. Okay. It's not part of our culture and upbringing to have to learn multiple languages. Okay. So they might be, let's assume that they think I'm pretty remarkable and they want to get to know me. They're interested. Now, that's not going to be true for everyone, but it could be true for most of them. And it's going to help you feel a lot more calm in that situation. Okay. So if we're living to the judgments of other people, right? Just like in that story of the donkey, we're running around killing ourselves trying to accommodate everybody around us. Instead, we need to bring that focus back to what we truly have control over, which is our actions, our attitudes, our thoughts, and our beliefs. And we're going to focus on that and allow that to build strength and capacity and confidence as you walk into different situations. And you can say, hey, I know that I bring a lot of value. I know that my English isn't perfect, but that's okay. I'll continue to make mistakes. But you know what? When I see somebody else speaking and they make mistakes, it actually makes me feel more comfortable around them. Someone who's perfect is actually not as appealing to us usually because we can't see ourselves in that person. We can't relate or connect to that person. But when we see somebody who is vulnerable, who is willing to make mistakes, who is willing, who is just very real and normal, and normal means making mistakes, we feel more connected to those people because we can relate to that imperfection. Okay. So when you're thinking about it, we love seeing imperfection in other people and vulnerability in other people, but we hate it in ourselves. So if we can recognize, hey, you know what? I love when other people are real and vulnerable and make mistakes because it makes me feel more comfortable. I need to allow myself to be real and vulnerable and make mistakes because that's what's going to create the most connection with me and these people in this room. Okay. So going in with this attitude of, okay, I can only control me, and the proactive thoughts, the intentional thoughts I'm going to think are going to be confident thoughts. And I'm going to keep gathering evidence for those confident thoughts, because there is plenty of evidence that you are valuable, you are smart, you are capable, you are intelligent, you are accomplished, you have so much grit and determination, you are humble and teachable and kind. There's all this evidence that you can pull and gather to build that confidence, and there's plenty of ways to gather evidence for each one of those. Okay. If you haven't taken the time to gather evidence of why you're so amazing, I encourage you to do that. We spend so much time picking ourselves apart and being negative towards ourselves, and not enough time building ourselves up. So this morning, actually, I was talking to my two older sons. Andrew is 16 and Jimmy is 14 right now. And Andrew was telling about something he did well at school. And his younger brother said, "Oh, you're always bragging." And I said, "No, it's not bragging. Like, if you can't brag, if you can't, share your wins with your family, who can you? Like, this needs to be a safe place where we can tell each other how great we are." Because I'm not with, my kids all day, every day. They're at school, they're doing all these things, and I want to know what they're proud of. I want us to talk about the good things, share the wins with each other, and celebrate those things together. Because as they fill their mind with those things, if they are able to share those things, then it builds that evidence for them in their lives, and it helps build that inner confidence. Okay. So obviously we don't want to run around kind of telling everybody else, and bragging about ourselves, but there needs to be safe places. And for us, I would like that to be our family, where we're going to celebrate each other. Okay, so gather the evidence that you have of what an amazing human you are, and all the amazing things that you've done, and all the amazing qualities that you've developed, and really celebrate that. Because as you gather that evidence, it creates a stronger mindset as you go into these situations where you recognize, oh, I don't often feel that comfortable in this situation, and it's because I have a lot of these negative thoughts that are intruding, and I'm letting the judgments of others dictate how I feel about me. And I encourage you to really, really question that, Because just like the story of the donkey, if we're relying on other people and the opinions of other people to tell us how to feel about ourselves, we're going to be constantly in pursuit of that. So that is, that really is the core of, overcoming these fear of speaking English, is when we can get clear about what we can control and what we can't control, and that we can put other people's judgments and opinions in its place. That is their judgment and opinion. Now, let's also talk about a very important other judgment that happens, and that's the judgment of ourselves. So a lot of times we walk into a room and we think other people are judging us when really it's ourself that's judging us. Okay? It's ourself that has this very high standard for ourselves. And so what we perceive as other people's judgment is actually how we're judging ourselves. So really get conscious of this. And I really want you to identify, am I just being hard on myself? And could I use more compassion towards myself? Now, compassion towards yourself, kind of one of the common questions is, well, if I just tell myself I'm okay and wonderful and great, then I won't be motivated to grow and improve. And I actually find that this is the opposite. The more you love yourself, the more you want to grow. Okay, the more you want to grow and just see what more you can do, just because it's fun, but out of not a sense of lacking, like something's deficient, but because you're full and you feel complete and you feel worthy and you feel wonderful. And it's like, okay, now what can I do to build on top of this? So I find that is way more motivating to us than something's wrong with me, or I need to, it's kind of like, going from negative to 0 versus 0 to 100. Okay. Nobody wants to just be coming back from a deficit. It's like being in debt and just then finally being not in debt, right? It's like, no, we want to build that bank account. We want to build that bank account. We want to build that savings, and that's more motivating than getting out of debt. Okay, so remember, our brains are wired for belonging. There's nothing wrong with you that you care about what other people think of you, and you have that fear of rejection and fear of judgment. It's a very, very natural thing for your brain to do. Your brain is doing its job. Okay, so nothing is wrong with you. You just happen to be human, and you happen to have the DNA of generations past who needed that fight or flight response socially in these situations. Okay. So with that, recognizing there's nothing wrong with me, this is actually very normal, but do I want to continue that way? Or do I want to use my thinking brain, my developed prefrontal cortex, to choose something different so that I can go from just surviving to thriving? All right. I know you can do this work. I know that you can overcome this fear of speaking English and overcome those fear of judgment and rejection. I know you can. I've seen my students do it over and over and over again. We've been seeing it for years and years, for over 15 years, and thousands of students making this shift. And as you do, and as you build that confidence and overcome those fears, then you'll step into those speaking situations more. You'll see that people actually do want to get to know you. They want to bring you into the group. They want that sense of belonging with you. They need you just as much as you need them. Okay, so when you open yourself up to that connection and say, you know what, this is who I am, and I love who I am, and you're going to love who I am too, and I'm going to love who you are. Okay, that creates that connection and those deeper relationships. And I want that for you, because really, isn't that the most beautiful part of life? Is that connection, those relationships. So go test this out, give that some thought, and bring awareness to whether or not that's a stumbling block for you in your road down this path of clear and confident communication. All right, we'll see you next time. And if you want to join us at Pronunciation Pro, please come and join us. We'd love to walk this path with you. All right, bye.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.